but that is a Thresh being banned away from Cass. That's the champion we saw him last week, but interestingly enough, we know Vander plays a lot of Thresh as well, so they kind of concede that point and just take it away from Cass.
And we have to highlight the AD carries, as you mentioned. Kalista, first pick here for the Copenhagen Wolves. We know that Siv is still up and available. Siv is currently Mr. Roll's most played champion, 3 out of his 10 games. Actually been picked 29 out of the last 30, as we heard from Crepo and Deficio on the analyst desk. So Roccat now trying to decide where do they put their priority. All of the junglers are up, all of the top laners are up. If they don't want to reveal anything, you can pick that Sivir. It'll work with any team composition.
Alistair's up as well. There's just a lot still available in this game. A lot of it's because there's been bans here like Fizz. I mean, Steve has played one game of Fizz. He went 0-4-1 in that game. So, I mean, unless Copenhagen Wolves and Roccat have been kind of squaring off against each other previous weeks and it's caused them a lot of trouble, that may be the case. But Roccat finally figure out what it is exactly they want in the form of Rumble and the Alistair. So there's the Alistair we're expecting sitting on their AD carry. There's no rush to take it. And likewise, both junglers up, but I kind of feel that Copenhagen Wolves may have got the better side of this.
Yeah, I'm not sure so far. You know, Roccat put a lot of priority on this Rumble last week against Fnatic. They actually first picked it on blue side, partially to steal it from Huni, and obviously just how powerful Rumble is in the current patch. But Steve is 1 and 2 on that champion. I'm not particularly blown away by it. We'll see how they round out the rest of their composition. Nidalee locked in for Shook on the Copenhagen Wolves, and that flex pick for Shen. Lenny has played it up top, and we have seen it in the support, despite the fact that Je suis Cass has not played it in summer. Many other people have, so you've got that opportunity to move it where you want.
Yeah, certainly still are a lot of options for the Copenhagen Wolves, but I think that Nidalee pick may be, well, pretty detrimental to Roccat here if they start locking an immobile mid laner. That's the kind of mid laner that Nukeduck has been playing more often, the low mobility mid laners that have poke. Varus not on the table. If he were to go for something like a Jace, if he's looking for it, we've seen games from him before, that would be kind of difficult to play into this. Although Nukeduck has been heavily focused here with the Varus, with the Victor. We have to see what his next tier is, and then it looks like they're going to hide it till last.
So I quite like that final counter pick option for Nukeduck, but Azir is his most played champion next to Varus. Both of them have played 4 games, and actually Azir's been banned against Nukeduck in 9 out of their 16 games. So it's their most targeted champion at this stage in the summer split. So Roccat got, I think, a good combination of everything, except hard engage, outside of just throwing a Sivir ulti and running at you.
I mean, they've got...
Which is pretty hard engage, I'll admit. However,
it's pretty hard.
Lacking CC is the words I wanted to say.
Also, I mean, they've now got the Gragas mixed in there as well, so you do have some engage tools, also the disengage coming in as well from the Gragas. So they do have a fairly well-rounded composition right now, and I actually like the play of just hiding their mid lane because it now forces Soren's hand, and Soren goes to what has previously been somewhat of a counter pick for him against the Victor in this Aurelia into a blind matchup. This seems quite risky for me.
I agree.
I mean, quite risky is putting it lightly. I don't feel like Soren is in a position where he can go, okay, Aurelia, this is it. It will win every matchup, unless he's become some kind of Aurelia god in the last 3 weeks.
And unless Shook is going to camp that middle lane. For anybody that watches the NA LCS, Hai played Nidalee last week against CLG and put on a great demonstration of how much impact a jungler can have across the lanes, throwing those spears out, consistently being in your face. So if Soren gets some help from Shook, that is a terrifying 2v2 combo. And this is something that we were talking about in the office earlier this week, how the jungler plus your mid lane, jungler plus your top laner, how will they compare versus their opponents? And I really like Nidalee plus Shen against the likes of Rumble Gragas in the early stages. Get that taunt down, some of the pounce damage from Cougar form, and Azir will be locked in here for Nukeduck. So going to tried and tested for Roccat. Copenhagen Wolves going to be relying on Soren and Freeze to put a lot of the damage down.
So it's interesting that the Azir was the lock-in here because this is the exact lane that we first really saw the Aurelia come out with Faker playing it against the Ku Tigers, I believe it was, where Faker just goes Aurelia mid into Azir. It's going to be great. But Roccat now with the Azir, this is more crowd control stacked on top of what they already had. So further disengage, further engage if you want to Shurima shuffle your way into the fight. Whereas the Wolves may struggle when it comes to looking to take down towers and sieging as a group, because Diaurelia melee range, Shen melee range wants to be in another lane anyway. It's all going to be now on the spears that are coming from Shook.
Yeah, and of course, if they can get that early dive, early aggressive lanes working in their favor, hugs all around. A lot on the line in this particular matchup. And of course, for Copenhagen Wolves, can they avoid 10th? For Roccat, can they make it into the playoffs? They're currently in that position, but they do need to at least split 1-1 on their next 2 games. There's the team comps on your screen, ladies and gentlemen. If you think the Copenhagen Wolves will avoid 10th place, or at least keep their hopes alive, hit us up on Twitter, #CWWin.
If, however, you think Roccat can put their foot in the playoff door, tweet at us, #ROCWin.
Loading up into the Rift for Game 1 in Week 9. The European LCS. This could start the tide of tiebreakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we didn't get any last split, depressingly. Maybe we'll be lucky and get them the splits. So,
Yeah.
One thing we do want to talk as we load in, Soren tells us what he's playing like without fear.
I actually think right now we're probably like really dangerous because we have nothing to lose basically, and all we can do is just like go hard. Like there's nothing to lose, so you don't have to be afraid of messing up or something. You just play to win.
30 seconds until minions spawn.
So, Soren, nothing to lose.
30 seconds until
There is a spot in the LCS that is still technically on the line, but I think it's the right attitude coming into the game. And just had a brainwave. I actually remember there was a battle, and it was also for 10th place in spring. MYM and Giants at the 13th hour all of a sudden.
Yep.
Giants pulled themselves back. Can Copenhagen Wolves do the same? As we see both teams with a very defensive start.
Defensive starts overall, and it's weird you talk about last split and similarities, because as we see Copenhagen Wolves looking for the lane swap, weirdly enough, week 9 of the spring split, Copenhagen Wolves and Roccat faced up against each other then, and Copenhagen Wolves took the win in the first game of the first day of week 9. So if lightning can strike twice, it's not all over for Copenhagen Wolves, but they certainly are playing with a composition that kind of says that they've got no fear here, just blind picking the Aurelia into mid lane and then dealing with whatever Roccat throw.
On the bright side for the Copenhagen Wolves, I think they've got a very clear win lane, win game, or if not, it's going to be difficult. Something we always talk about is their comeback mechanics, and there's not a lot of wave clear for the Wolves.
Yeah.
The last time these teams met was in week 5. It was a Roccat victory. Very convincing, as you can tell by kills, towers, dragons. And we see a lot of early trading here in this middle lane between Soren and Nukta, as well as the hand-holding for both teams' respective junglers.
Yeah, this is something that has started to kind of drift towards giving the top laners more experience, especially when you watch some teams in LCK that actually give over the buff sometimes. I believe Marin just kind of regularly gets it while he's on Maokai, but the early game certainly has started to shift in the metagame and how we've seen it. I wonder whether these teams are going to look for the bouncing the wave that Krepos talked about a lot, and then kind of leaving 3 people there, and your jungler just goes and helps out the rest of them out. But we have seen the upside down lanes for now, so that is not going to be the case at all.
Not this time around. We're talking about those upside down lanes. Freeze, as well as Yasuikas up in that top lane with a small advantage, shoving in Mr. Rals and Vander. Obviously having that melee support is going to make life a little difficult. And Kalista still very, very highly contested. Freeze's stats versus the average, well, exceptional to say the least. And that is on the current number 10 team, so that's also something to remember.
Freeze's stats in general are just very good when you look at his laning phase for the number 10 team. I mean, he regularly ends up in CS against his enemy AD carry, so we'll see exactly how Freeze can do in this matchup. But I think the bot lane dynamic here is actually a very unique one, because these are both teams that changed a player in their bot lane midway through the split. And now the question is, it's the first time they're meeting, who has had the better settling in period now for these bot lanes?
I'm actually glad you bring that up, because Kars has played now 6 games in the LCS, Mr. Rals has played 10, and last week's Friday was the first time that Kars really looked fantastic on that Thresh. Looking for those flash hooks, finding them a lot of the time. And we'll see how that works out. Steve and Rumble also. Steve has had some good games, and Steve has been heavily focused for some bad games. And Steve has been left to the dogs. I distinctly remember talking about how a team can, prioritize some of that farm, prioritize some of the experience, and Steve sometimes is on the losing end of that discussion.
It certainly looks, though, by the way that Gragas has positioned himself down in the bottom lane, giving him a ward, certainly doesn't look to be the case for this one. Jankos actually going to try and give the birthday present over to Lenny at this point. Does get the flash. It's a nice little gift for him.
Yeah, did not follow for the body slam flash, Jankos. So far, off to a decent enough start. Going to be helping out Steve on that rumble. I want to take a look up at the top lane for a little because Freeze has now extended that CS advantage to 16. Stress, you asked about who's settling in more. In this game, Freeze and Class have obviously the advantage, but it is the lane matchup playing into their favor.
We're in a very unique situation with this lane matchup in that we don't see Kalista and Sivir in the same game very often at all anymore, and haven't for a couple of patches. Yes, Kalista did receive a couple of changes in the previous patch, but Freeze and a lot of the AD carries clearly still think Kalista is a top tier AD carry, regardless of the fact that she now only scales off that 19%. And you can see that Freeze is just laying down the law in this top lane. I mean, there's not a lot that Vander can do in this situation. Being an Alistar has to sit back and respect the double range. And Kaz is just going to throw out the bindings, put down the pool just again and again, just harass them down and get them out of lane. Well,
get rooted, Rolls.
Yeah, it was normalized to now, I think it's 0.1 of a second at the end of a recall, so that'll tell you exactly how close to catching Mr. Rales that actually was. But the recall itself is actually going to be a big factor here, because now Copenhagen Wolves, do they sit in the 2v2 in the bottom lane and bring Lenny top, or do they stick with the 2v1s right now? Because honestly, in the 2v1, Mr. Rales and Vander are getting eaten alive.
Yeah, we'll find out what decision they decide to prioritize. As you mentioned, on the patch with the changes to Kalista, scaling slightly less off that AD, flat AD, we're seeing more and more common the Blade of the Ring into Hurricane build, and Cutlass already secured the freeze. Pickaxe for Mr. Riles, and the swap has been matched. So both Freeze and Cast have moved themselves down to find Riles and Vander. Steve showed in the top lane actually quite quickly, so it was well informed. Low risk, and Shook stood right on top of a ward. We're 6 minutes in, and we've not seen Shook show his face at all. He's even on CS with Jankos. Jankos already had a successful gank, so that early game impact that Italy could have, not showing through yet.
Not yet, but it's also, as Jankos gets onto Cast, he doesn't hit, but Cast is just going to be able to walk out of it.
Should be able to. Barrel's going to at least put some damage down. And Cast loses 75% of his hit points.
Yeah, that is obviously not what Cast was looking for. He was just trying to get that pink ward, but a little too greedy, a little overzealous down in that bottom side. But honestly, this Nidalee not having the impact yet isn't the most detrimental thing right now for the Copenhagen Wolves, because once the Runeglaive is complete, once she can start throwing out the spears and sit in front of turrets and kind of look to have this more split pressure that Copenhagen Wolves are looking for across the map with the Shen, with the Aurelia, that's when Copenhagen Wolves need the Nidalee to start doing it. They need those spears to land when she's sitting there with Freeze and Cast, while Aurelia and Shen are off in other lanes.
Timing element involved for the Wolves. Let's see if they can find it. We did catch a quick glimpse of Soren jumping onto Nukeduck in the middle. And whenever you've got that Aurelia mid, you almost always want that exit strategy minion. Dash in, Equilibrium Strike, get a couple autos and dash out. Greppa explained it beautifully last week, and unfortunately Soren didn't have those exit minions all the time. Gone for the Sheen first versus the makings of a Marilla Nomicon. So everybody's building up their power. Looks like Runeglaive already completed for Shook, so slow and steady as all of the lanes are farming themselves up into a powerful position.
Slow and steady, but this bottom lane really, again for the Copenhagen Wolves, seems to be, as usual, getting ahead. We talked about how Freeze normally gets himself ahead, but this time it's going to translate into a real mismatch of actual item spikes here for Mr. Rales. He's now going to have to sit back and wait for quite a while here when it comes to actually having that second item complete, Infinity Edge into likely Static Shiv at this point. As Rales, he's just going to want to sit as far away from Freeze and farm as possible in that lane that he can, and just not really get forced off the wave. But he has managed to even up a little bit of the CS with the time that Free spent backing as well. But this has been a slow-paced game. We'll see if Shook invading now opens this one up. No Gragas in the top side jungle. He's all the way up in top lane itself. And Shook is well warded here, so they can read him like a book.
And of course, Jankos is the one that's picked up the successful ganks already. Forced the flash, which is, you know, almost available for Lenny. Showed his face to help out Mr. Rolls and Vander. Because of the fact that Cast got chunked out, it has allowed Mr. Rolls to equalize that farm. Copenhagen Wolves, as well as Roccat, actually get standard lanes relatively often. Copenhagen Wolves in half of their games, for Roccat, a little over half of their games they get these standard lanes. But for both of them, they're traditionally a little bit down in gold at 10 minutes. Today, they're very, very even. And I think you can feel the weight of this game, how much it means to everybody. Lenny's going to get caught by the body slam. Cask is actually going to knock him to safety. As Lenny well timed his dash. So no summon spell used.
What this is going to do though, Shook is going to hop over that wall and look to invade some of the jungle down on the bottom side. I would imagine actually it's going to start Dragon seeing Gragas in the top lane. And it's because of how pushed up Freeze and Je Suis Cast was. So it's a good read seeing the Gragas. However, they aren't really going to be able to answer this from the side of Roccat. So just the slight error from Jankos of showing without really getting anything too much leads to the first Dragon.
Yeah, and for only the 7th time this split. So the Copenhagen Wolves have now played 17 games, and 7 of them, they've got the first Dragon. They've at least started an additional win condition for their team. 5 Dragons into winning a team fight, because I really do not like the wave clear side of Wolves. So if they ever get into a position where they have to deal with Rumble, Azir, Sivir under a tower, I think that's a scary position to be. However, if they can force Roccat to fight for a Dragon, good way to look for other options.
That's beyond scary, Kevin. That's like seeing us before we get makeup before the show. That's how much of a nightmare that one is.
Mr. Prince of Wales, not sure about you, but I'm lovely before and after.
I was going to say, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, Trev, but at this point, that's a bit of a nightmare situation if it gets there. We are a long way off that one, though. Still no real opening up of the game when it comes to skirmishes and fights, mainly because no team has really had to right now. Copenhagen Wolves are fairly content to be holding a little bit ahead in the bottom lane, but there is a binding that lands.
Yeah, it's going to equate to a lot of damage for Vander, but of course he's going to be able to sustain himself up with that triumphant roar. And I do think Shook may have misread the situation. I think he thought he's locked in Evelyn, because we've not seen him do anything at the moment. Yes, he's farming well, so
well,
I'll give credit to that.
They made the
but
call,
there's so much power in middle lanes.
Right. Well, yeah, you're not wrong, but he's also not doing anything intrinsically wrong himself when it comes to it. He's got the first Dragon of the game for his team. He is going to become relevant the later into this game. But honestly, there hasn't really been all that many situations for Shook to get himself into the enemy lanes. Bot lane has been shoved in, Nuke Duck has been getting shoved in, and without a super risky gank, it's difficult. Also, just with the pressure that Jankos put in top lane, unless he was there to counter gank, which he kind of wouldn't get too much more than just an exchange of summoners, I actually feel like he's done fine just picking up the Dragon.
The only thing is, because of the limited options, Steve has a 12.5 minutes Liandry's Torment on Rumble.
Right.
He's getting very close to getting level 2 in that ultimate. Morella Nomacon's picked up Fanuka. Finally, Shook is trying to play Whack-A-Mole, but doesn't have the best aim at the moment. And Vander, if you've gone for the headbutt pulverize, you can't knock Freeze under your tower. So defensive play means Freeze and Cast have now built up that CS lead once more.
Yeah, going back to that Liandry's Torment is actually, mid lane is where the action is.
Soren is in so much trouble. The body slam connects! And he just gets ping-ponged under the tower. Happy birthday, says Jankos.
Oh, the bounce house in the middle lane. I mean, that's the problem with Soren shoving up so much, is that Shook isn't able to make those plays without any kind of spear landing, and even then it's dangerous. This time, however, Jankos, now that he has his ultimate available, easy path into the mid lane to pick himself up a kill. That is one of the problems that Soren is going to have here, is if he wants to pressure Nuke Duck, he has to overextend.
Well played by Jankos once more. 3 times we've seen Jankos, 3 times he's done something positive for Roccat. Seeing as though we like to talk about objectives. First Blood for the former First Blood King. Only the 7th time this split as well.
Maybe now that it's his name day.
Maybe it's his name day. There you go.
He can
Takes us back in time to when he was more successful at finding early kills.
Roccat, however, they swap up now. They lost their bottom tower, so they're just going to give the farm over to Steve down on the bottom side. The problem is, once Steve pushes it out, he is not going to be able to farm that wave without the sight of the Copenhagen Wolves bottom lane up in the top side, which is where they're heading. And Roccat have the attempted push on the tower, but Freeze is going to get there in time.
And the thing is, Roccat, I feel like they're so scared of this 2v2.
Oh, yes.
It's the second time they've tried to swap away. They managed to shove Lenny out, and then are they going to swap again? I mean, yes, they're down 20 CS. There's a BF sword finally for Rals, so he's going to be slow to I-Edge, but slightly quicker to I-Edge static Shiv versus the Blade of the Rune King.
The lead that Rumble has, though, is kind of offsetting that. Because Rumble is just going to be very, very relevant in these team fights. The Andres Torment, already completed, as we alluded to, is sitting on a little bit of gold. We'll have the Sorcerer Boots in about a minute or so. Should be just in time for Dragon, but Cass is blasted back.
And Jankos is going to do it again. No! Fate's call! That's going to save Cass's life. Soren's decided to engage on Steve. Steve starts to overheat. Here comes Nukta. He's actually going to knock Soren onto the back. The Blade Surge to minions. One more order shall be given. Nukta trades 1 for 1.
In the bottom lane, Soren figured he had it set up just 1 versus 1, but Nuktak had already realized that he had to roam out, and the appearance of Lenny in the middle lane meant that he knew he was having to head bottom lane as well. That's going to be a turret going down in favor of Roccat, which will put them ahead in the gold lead here. How do Copenhagen Wolves respond with this? Because Shook is deep in the enemy jungle, but he's about to get surrounded if the bottom lane can make it in time.
So Roccat are going to try scramble to defend the mid tower. Dragon will be up in 30 seconds. Copenhagen Wolves took an uncontested Drake to secure the first of the game. Roccat will have the timer for that. He will have heard the noise. And Mr. Rals and Vander, they're setting themselves up top. Doubt we'll see a dive.
But look at how many people topside Wolves have right now. They've got 3 people topside. They've got the Aurelia down on the bottom side. Okay, Roccat aren't rushing for the Dragon yet, but now you're able to track the Wolves on their movements through. They did, however, secure good vision control on the top side, so they're looking probably at this point to trade for the tower. Inevitably, they'll get the tower regardless of whether the Dragon is started by Roccat or not, with how low the tower is. And with Shook up here, actually, Rales and Vander probably need to start backing themselves away here, because that minion wave is going to push in. And now that that Rune Glaive is completed on Italy, these spears are really starting to hurt Roccat. You're going to have to run unless the team can get there in time.
So,
teleport available.
Headbutt pulverized went down from Vander. Teleports come in from behind. Here comes Steve. That's a good equalizer. Stand United will bring Lenny into the fight. Lenny's going to find the taunt, but it's a flash away from Steve to avoid it. Nuktak is going to shuffle over the wall. Vander's looking for a pulverize. He'll back away before he can find it. Everything in the kitchen sink is thrown in for naught.
Oh, well, they got a lot of summoners from the Copenhagen Wolves at that point, but Soren is playing the split push game down in the bottom side of the map as well. Look at top side. Again, Jankos is looking to continue this. Still has his ultimate available.
Jankos gets taunted, he gets rooted. Vander and Rals are trying to get in. That explosive cast will be defensive for now. Tower was secured, you can see it on the bottom. Shook, he's jumped in. The Rune Glaive plus auto attacks will secure the second kill for the Wolves. They've jumped onto Vander, and his will is broken. 2 for 0 up top.
The Copenhagen Wolves just taking objectives both sides of the map from this one. The top tower is likely to fall here as well. Soren did get the bottom tower meanwhile, while that engagement was going on. So the Wolves have kind of said to Roccat, we don't care that you had Dragon control earlier. We don't care that it was a slow game, because we want to play the objective game. We want to get into 3 lanes at the same time as this game continues. And with those 2 side lane outer towers being down, only the middle lane tower stands between them and a 1-3-1.
And with Dragon coming up shortly, Copenhagen Wolves could siege middle, could go for Dragon. Options are plenty. 3,000 gold up for the second time in 11 games. They are looking likely to have a lead at 20 minutes. This mid lane Irelia and the movement around the map seems to be working out for the Wolves. It also helps that Mr. Riles has been kept a little down.
Right. It's for the most part, it has been good. I mean, Soren taking the 1v1 earlier, got the kill from it, allowed him to get the goal to now have a Hex Drink alongside his Trinity Force for this one. So while Soren's scoreline is 1-2-0 right now, which is quite underwhelming when you look at it from an outside perspective, his actual impact on this game has been very large.
Which, you can't equate it, but the pressure
Right.
that Soren is putting has now become a split push Irelia. Very few, actually nobody on the Roccat side can take him one-on-one at the moment. There's no armor to speak of. And Copenhagen Wolves, 2 dragons. Uncontested as well.
I actually, looking further on into this game, I wonder who will be able to take him on 1 versus 1. Nuked up with the Zhonya's, I don't think he's going to last through the damage. Flashes gets bound anyway!
Oh, he's going to get connected, but the Emperor's will, the Divide rather, will split off the jungle. So ultimate used and the summon spell. Copenhagen Wolves setting themselves up for the last remaining outer tower. It's 3-3 in towers. This will be the 4th of the game if the Wolves can take it.
I like the tactic here by the Wolves, but they're going to need a little more than 1 minion wave like that. Here's where the spears have to count. We saw it in the top lane. This is where Shook has to earn his money in this game. He's got to get the damage out.
And this is also something you mentioned in Picks and Bans, Stress, the somewhat limited siege power of the Copenhagen Wolves. Azir and Sivir got such great wave clear. Unfortunately, as soon as Wolves got to the tower, Shen can't offer a whole lot, Aurelia can't offer a whole lot. You need to immediately back away.
It's one of the very rare cases when in this situation, the sum of all the parts does not do the job. It's individually across the map that the Copenhagen Wolves actually have to pile the pressure on, and that's exactly what they're defaulting to now. It's what they have to do if they want to really keep the pressure onto Roccat. Aurelia up in the top lane right now, Shen on the bottom side has his ultimate and the teleport still available. So the Copenhagen Wolves know what they've got to do. Executing it now against the Roccat team, who is going to look to hard engage onto freeze and cast, is going to be a tricky one.
One thing the Wolves are also doing, I feel, maybe even overdoing, every time they're applying pressure on an area of the map, they really put a lot of wards into it. You can see, 5 minutes ago they had, 6, 7 wards on the top half of the river. Now they've got 4, 5 wards on the bottom half. It's allowing them to play with the pressure, but it's a lot of vision.
For now, the problem is, though, their wards aren't conducive to playing risky. The wards aren't deep enough to be pushing up to inner towers. They have no real vision apart from the shallow entrances to the river. So it means Copenhagen Wolves can't look to extend further, and a lot of it's just to do with middle tower. Middle tower still being up reduces the ability for the Wolves to actually just push into the jungle. They're doing it, but look at how risky this is. Cast takes a lot of damage. Roccat certainly putting the heat on.
Very preemptive, defensive equalizer from Steve. He's still got a CS advantage, but it's shrinking now that the Wolves have unlocked really their side lanes. Shook farming up a storm. Got Abyssal Scepter completed, Sork Shoes. There's that Runeglaive as well. We saw how much damage the spears can do. We're still waiting for the Wolves to crack open the entirety of Rockat's jungle. And you can see Yankos also still farming his way up, donating red buff over, while getting tankier with Expector's Cowl. Very early Void Star from Nuktuk, I think to counter the Spirit Visage in the Abyssal Center.
Yeah, also a Hex Drinker onto the Aurelia as well. So I'm interested to see where Nuktuk goes from here with the itemization. Has a Blasting Wand here. Will he look to pick up either the route towards the Rabadon's Death Cap, which now is such an expensive item that we'll see it later into the game. I kind of expect him at some point to look to pick up the Zhonya's later into the game if the utility is what he's looking for, but right now, honestly, Nuktuk has a lot of options available. It depends on what lane he's going to position himself in, because if he's sat in front of a Nidalee, you don't want the armor. You want the magic resistance.
As it stands, Nuktuk is defending the last outer tower, the last bastion of control. Luckily for Roccat, they can always throw up an extra tower to slow down the Copenhagen Wolves minions with that Azir passive. But we can still feel this trepidatious game. Slow and steady, and I think it's both good and bad, because Kalista and Irelia is going to get scary, Shen's going to get tanky, but you're also letting Azir farm up, you're letting Sivir become relevant, you're letting Rumble get closer to his hourglass.
For sure, but Roccat right now aren't chasing the fights when Copenhagen Wolves are kind of putting them out in front of them. They have a fair amount of hard engage here that we've already looked at. They're going to be forced into these fights around the neutral objectives coming up, like in 1 minute 30 when Dragon comes up. As long as they don't get picked off before, and with Rockat's warding on the top side and just through some of the jungle on the lower side, there's no reason for Roccat to get picked up. But Steve hasn't really made a whole bunch of teleport plays with Equalizer because the situations haven't been present.
Yeah.
He's not actually had the opportunity to do it. And that's why Roccat don't really seem to be doing all that much with what they've got, because right now they haven't been forced to. They've only really lost just a couple of towers, and Wolves haven't pushed them any further. It doesn't feel like a Wolves that are playing with nothing to lose. They're very controlled, which I would have liked to have seen with this kind of performance earlier in this game.
Yeah, that's for sure. Copenhagen Wolves playing aggressive last week, allowed them to beat H2G. Mixed up that strategy against Roccat. As you mentioned, Stress, 45 seconds until Dragon spawns. Vision control being established by the Wolves. Litter a whole lot of wards when they have something to fight for. A little bit of a defensive sweep there from Vanda, seeing that javelin toss coming in.
Morales is spotted out, but Shook is going to back away to look for the setup on the Dragon themselves. So Copenhagen Wolves, they are setting up the vision around it. They have most of the vision control that they need. But look at Steve up in the top lane, pushing into the Shen. So at this point, he wants to shove just Lenny in just as much as he possibly can at this point, so that Lenny, when the Dragon does arise, has to lose experience and lose the ability to really push that lane back out. Here's the Dragon start. This is gone before Roccat can even respond to this.
Well, Dragon number 3.
They go for mid-tower instead, though. Look at this. Nukeduck is pushing and has the Sun Disc up, so they want to trade this for a much better objective for themselves.
So gold and lane control. Teleport comes out from Lenny. That will be enough to dissuade the pressure, despite the Dark Bandit connecting. Copenhagen Wolves opt not to follow in. The only real hard CC engage they have will be that flash taunt or taunt flash from Shen. They're holding on to it for now.
Roccat were not on the same page with that play. The Sun Disc goes up, Steve is already rotating, but on the back line, right at the Sun Disc was Mr. Morales. Didn't get anywhere near the turret to look to push. And the teleport comes in early from Lenny to make sure they can't push the turret, but now Roccat just used a lot of the pressure on their map without getting anything for it. That's the third Dragon now of the Copenhagen Wolves. It gives them the added mobility to now look to set up the movements between lanes that they're looking for with a 1-3-1 right now even faster. Wolves are in a great position to look to set themselves up across all 3 lanes.
You see some items being purchased. So Copenhagen Wolves are going to use the gold lead that they have earned, turn it into an item lead. Sunfire K plus Spirit Visage for Lenny's split pushing Shen. You can see him taking control of the bottom lane. More of Malmortius was completed for Soren a little while ago. He's setting up Mantle in the top lane. And that 1-3-1, it is gaining Copenhagen Wolves some control. But they've not taken the mid outer turret. They've not pushed to the inner turret up top. For Copenhagen Wolves, that's how they need to gain some control. The other alternative, they've got a fantastically quick Baron. With the amount of damage Nidalee, Irelia, and Kalista have, they could play the Baron bait as we're getting later and later into the game.
It's going to be difficult for Roccat to even look to set up some kind of steal, but Roccat shouldn't have to steal it at that point, because if Copenhagen Wolves put themselves all inside the pit, that's when Steve with his Rumble is going to open up. The Azir is going to open up the damage. So it is still dangerous for Copenhagen Wolves. If they try and just pull that trigger before it's easily accessible for them, Roccat certainly will punish them.
Great risk comes great reward. Copenhagen Wolves, 10th place, 3 wins, 13 losses on a split.
Sometimes great reward comes with great risk. That's why it's great risk, Trevor. You don't always get it, otherwise it wouldn't be a great risk. I mean, I wish that was a thing, otherwise I'll just buy lottery tickets or say, hey, great risk, I got a great reward.
To argue the semantics, didn't you? I hate it when you're right. So, Copenhagen Wolves. Shook, still farming up a storm. Got an hourglass completed. Gonna be playing that sort of bruiser Nidalee. if memory serves, it was a similar style of item build from Diamond Prox last week. And he was pouncing into the middle of team fights.
Well, here's the Baron play that you were talking about. Ends up with Soren taking a bit of damage.
It's a little awkward. I mean, it's not so much a Baron play as a just making sure you know we're here.
Well, the problem is, like, they aggro it for themselves, and then like, they're kind of mid lane. Probably don't want to push in on that. It's not a play that I think Copenhagen Wolves even themselves feel comfortable in making, so they shouldn't even look to make it. This is the problem. Crepo said the sign of poor shot calling, a bad Baron calls. And okay, that wasn't a Baron call in the sense that they actually committed to it, but you can see that Wolves are teasing with the idea.
Yeah, they are. Jankos is now teasing with death. He's going to use the explosive cask, but Black Shield was put onto Soren. Big chunk from a javelin toss.
That'll do it, though. That will be enough for the Wolves to actually commit to this, because, I mean, Jankos putting himself that far out there, because of the warding from the Wolves, it was enough to set that fight up. Here come the top laners into it, though.
Stand United was being channeled on cast. Lenny should arrive. Equalizers down. They've stopped the Baron at least. Lenny forced to flash defensively, and Cast gets out alive. Nukeduck looking for the kill. So, Stand United was used. Teleport from Steve. Roccat, with a little bit of pushing power, might get themselves a tower.
Here they make the same play again. Put the Sun Disc up, push for the mid tower. You know Copenhagen Wolves can't really defend this. They were so heavily chunked, and look at the damage that Azir is already doing right now. And the teleport coming in behind from Lenny, though.
So Lenny needs to get the taunt. He's also going to get through the Sun Disc. That's a two-man taunt. He gets headbutted away. Emperor's will divide Lenny under the tower. The Flame Splitter is chunking down Soren, and that Sun Disc doing a lot of work. Copenhagen Wolves slightly underestimating damage and the disengage from Roccat.
Now, there is so much disengage coming from Roccat that there's no real way of Copenhagen Wolves taking the fight when numbers are equal. There is really no chance for them to even look for that kind of fight. And you can see that Roccat, they'll just sit fairly comfortable in this situation, knowing their ultimates are available, to allow Copenhagen Wolves to make almost no decision. Almost no decision. They start the Baron, and then it's easy to tell for Roccat that they know it's a bad call.
And what a difference when you look at that Baron call versus how Fnatic does 20 to 30 minute Barons. And even last week, Gambit also had a fantastic early Baron call. They had good vision control, they knew how quickly they could take the objective and rushed it.
I mean, I can't fault Copenhagen Wolves for looking for it after you chunk the jungler, but one of the biggest problems is from earlier, Steve went unchecked on this run. He's very, very strong right now. And as long as he's got teleport and his equalizer and isn't in the fight, that's when Copenhagen Wolves can look to make a play like this. This is the fourth dragon now of the game, under contention. This time both teams are around here, and we've already spoken about how Wolves can't take the head-on fight. The ultimates are back available for Roccat. Shook needs to hit some spears here if they want to fight this.
This could come to a 50-50 Smite fight. Shook has it available, Jankos has it available. It's secured by Roccat. Dragon number one, and they do not want the fight. Aspect of the dragon been delayed.
Yeah, another 6 minutes onto the clock, but finally, 32 minutes into this game, the mid-outer tower falls, and might not be over yet. That's a big spear onto Mr. Allies. The Wolves are not done yet.
They are not, but they cannot deal with the wave clear.
They can't.
Copenhagen Wolves, this is another time where you've tried to push a tower.
It's been a few
Nukeduck has just cleared it out. Nukeduck did finish the death cap. That's his next item. So starting to rack up a lot of ability power. 590 with his current build. As the penetration from Void Staff has the very burst-oriented Azir build. He might be going for that Hourglass next, which you can see Steve already has completed. So again, that small gold lead that Roccat had has not alluded to a lot of control.
There is a moment coming up here where Copenhagen Wolves can look to at least get further vision on the top side. Once Rumble shows bottom side and shows himself in the wave, if he stays there, Roccat don't have that teleport available, so they can push out, get some deeper wards, look to pressure at least top and mid, and as soon as you draw them away, that's where you can set up further vision as well and look to get in other lanes. But Steve has backed away from the lane here, so Wolves have to play this a lot more carefully because they can't actually commit to anything without being able to see Rumble, and Steve's not the kind of player that's going to sit over there with no teleport and not look to move.
Yeah. And you can see the weaknesses of Copenhagen Wolves' draft coming into play now. They had good lanes, they did well in lanes. They were playing the split push game, but Wolves are not fully committed to split pushing. They're not fully committed to the 1v1. Because, well, they're not consistently doing it the whole time.
and like part of the reason is that they just haven't been aggressive enough in their deep warding. They haven't been going in as like a 3-man unit, putting wards down deep and looking to rotate. Soren pushing up without the wards. It has been caught.
Stand United being channeled. Lenny is going to be looking for the taunt. This has now turned into a 3-on-2. Look at the jungle. The Wolves are moving through it. The engage gets Stand United at the very least. So it'll be teleport v teleport for a little while. And Roccat will have timed Lenny's ultimate.
Wolves are back on the Baron. This is one of the biggest problems that you see a lot of teams have, is just, I don't know what to do. Okay, let's go Baron.
The thing is, if the Wolves get enough time, the Rend plus Smites should make it a 65-35 Baron, if they chunk it effectively.
For sure. But Roccat are never going to give themselves that time because Roccat aren't under any other pressure. There is no external factor for Roccat to not be around the Baron, or at least close enough to contest to the point where Wolves just go, oh, they're here, back away. There's nothing forcing Rockat's hand to take a step back away. And it's just this ping pong of wards and vision control. Just up to the enemy jungle and back away. And that's all that is happening right now until one of these teams finally either catches a pick or manages to get themselves some pressure elsewhere on the map. Dragon will do it when it comes up, about 3 minutes away on that one. It will drag the teams down, but I feel like Roccat will make the same play again. It's on Soren at that point to set up the top side in time for the Dragon to at least take a tower and put more pressure onto Roccat.
And you don't actually want to team fight Roccat.
Right.
With the Gragas, with the Rumble. I quite like Jankos picking up the Frozen Heart, considering how auto-attack reliant both Aurelia and Kalista are. That attack speed reduction even more effective against the team composition that the Wolves put together. But this may be a battle of Barons and Dragons, and again, vision from Wolves is great around Baron, but it hasn't necessarily equated into 100% control.
Vision itself is a two-step process. Getting the vision tends to be the easy bit. Using the vision is the thing that the Wolves haven't done with any of this. It's like they've had decent vision control, but they've never had it in places where Roccat have been able to be punished by moving forward. They managed to catch Jankos once. Around the Baron buff, but it didn't equate to anything further. However, if they'd managed to set up wards deeper and have that happen again and again, you punish Roccat for even stepping forward in their jungle. You need to make the enemy jungle dangerous territory for themselves before you start making any of these plays.
Multiple blind face checks. Force that, and then you can make them eat a Dark Binding and kill them. In theory. Carson Shook going to clear out the Baron pit once more. We'll see if they can get themselves some deep vision down, throwing out those javelins for a little bit of scouting. And Soren down in that bottom lane. He has no teleport, so if the Wolves are out of position elsewhere, Soren could get caught out. Although the last time Roccat tried to kill Soren, Lenny just Stand United hit it up and then ended that attempt.
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest problems for Copenhagen Wolves and their vision is because they're not running a jungle that wants to build Sightstone, Nidalee just kind of goes, nope, don't need that, just going to build AP. They have 2 upgraded ward trinkets, which isn't intrinsically a problem as long as you're having the upgraded sweepers, you've got pink wards, and you're taking control of the enemy vision so that they just can't put their own wards down. Roccat on the other side, 3 sweepers, 2 Sightstones. They're sitting pretty when it comes to at least defending areas that they have to for now, because they know that Roccat, from this point, are going to draw Copenhagen Wolves into team fights, or at least engage on the 3 remaining members that aren't split pushing, and then it's a case of how much do you stop in the side lanes. That's on Rockat's shoulders.
Yeah, while you're talking about all the items, we're well into the late game. You've got a 4-item freeze. Picked himself up a Null Magic Mantle to go with the BT, Blade of the Ring, etc. Mr. Rawls, I-Edge, Shiv, Bloodthirster. So let's see which AD carry is going to do more damage. Obviously the utility that Rawls will bring, the rest of his team cannot be understated. Dragon is up and Roccat making it very clear they will not give up another Dragon uncontested.
They won't. Spears coming out from Shook. Haven't yet landed, but you can see how afraid Roccat are of actually stepping forward to the Dragon Pit without committing to it fully. But again, There's no real way of Copenhagen Wolves actually dealing with the wave clear that Roccat have right now, so they can always put this just nice buffer of distance where you can just sidestep a spear at this point. I mean, the only real person that they're worried about a spear hitting is Nuclear, because there's a spell shield on Mr. Rales. The rest of the Roccat lineup are fairly tanky, and they have a little bit of healing coming from Alistair. So I actually like this play from Roccat to just kind of cut straight down the middle. Say, we don't care that you want to go for the dragon. We're forcing you to come and defend your base. Same play, third time in a row. This time for the inhibitor tower. It's going to be a more difficult one to sell.
I agree. Punish the limited wave clear. Make Freeze go for those autos and then try to bounce him back. An explosive cast. Let's see if Roccat can make it work. They're still down in gold. Dragon will be secured. Soon enough, we'll have more dragons killed than champions. Stress. This is actually on track to be the most passive kill-based game we've had since Origin Copenhagen Wolves. That had 11 kills in 40 minutes.
It doesn't surprise me at this point, from the way that the teams are playing passively. Roccat choose not to take this fight.
Wow.
They go for the Baron instead. Wolves are being way too comfortable with this. Okay, Kalista cancels her recall, but Cast Hood already back. Roccat have pretty good Baron clear themselves now with this Azir, with the damage that Rumble is going to have. So, now Soren blasted in.
Jankos knocks Soren closer. Baron stolen! Shook steals the Baron, as well as Dragon number 4. Dentist throws his hands up in the air. Steve and the rest of Roccat say they don't care. 5 on 4. Right, teleport back from Steve to defend the inhibitor. The rest of Roccat, they're pushing. This will be a 4 on 3.
Lenny's pushing bottom lane at the same time. He cancelled it.
All the tower was killed.
Inhibitor.
So, there's so many minions here. Roccat are onto the tower. This is 5 versus 3. They might be trading inhib for inhib. Just as we were saying how passive the game is, it has been blown wide open.
Who commits the hardest here? Roccat are backing off already. Lenny has not backed off. He's pushing a big Baron stack of waves. Copenhagen Wolves can use the spears to prevent the backs here coming from Roccat. Not enough people can get back to stop Lenny at this point. They've got one Nexus turret already. Lenny is pushing for his second. The Wolves, all they've got to do is stop the recall.
Lenny is onto the next Nexus turret. Take a look at the Wolves. They're interrupting the recalls. Nukeduck is trying to get back. He may be able to finish his cooldown. Lenny has got Baron and power minions. The Copenhagen Wolves are on the brink of being eliminated from the LCS, and they may be picking up the win that keeps them alive. Lenny, can you do it? He's still on the Nexus. He's hammering it away. Nukeduck and Van have been able to run all the way back. The Shurima shuffle. Copenhagen Wolves keep their hopes alive.
You are looking good! All 3 motherfuckers! 1, 2, 3! Oh!
For the first time in 6 weeks, we've heard the howl twice in a row. Copenhagen Wolves need to go 2-0 this week. They play Giants tomorrow. And if SK goes 0-2, we are on track for a tiebreaker for 9th and 10th place.
My word, what an ending to that game. Such a passive game for 35 minutes. Nobody making any decisions at all. Roccat start a Baron. Shook comes in, steals it away. As you said, on the very brink of being out of the LCS. A loss here puts them in automatic relegation, and they keep their hopes alive. My word, the Copenhagen Wolves right now, whew. I mean, they played without fear for the last 5 minutes of that one for sure. They certainly went for it, and it was just a game of chase. Cut down Roccat and stop them from recalling.
Roccat will be reviewing that decision to give up Dragon number 4